Welcome everybody to this edition of Chris's Chat and Babble, CC&B as I like to call it. Today I've got a stalwart of the industry, a Mr. Brian Smith, who many of you may have worked with, will certainly know. Brian, I met him in 2005. We both started with SPL. I think Brian was there a couple of months before me. Brian's got a wealth of project management experience, retired now and playing with boats, but that's a different story and plenty of hilarity to be had there. Yeah, welcome, Brian. Welcome back into Life, the Universe, and everything. How are things with you?
Thanks, Chris. Things are good. It's retirement's been interesting. It's not. I would have to say it's not something to fall into without having a project plan, because in a point of fact, that's what it is. And the trouble is that there are lots of surprises along the way, and it's something you need to start early. And this is for you. You need to start early, thinking about it and planning for it, because when it happens, it's a bit of a shock to the system, to tell you the truth. Project management has its own unique challenges. There are some issues. There has been a tendency, and I know I've been involved in it, a lot of people. Ed Koch was one. There were a couple when we were in Estonia. But they're all techies who want to be project managers, because you see, as a project manager, you sit around with your feet up on the desk, you drink coffee, you chat to a few people, and you get paid heaps of money.
That was Phil Addis's way of doing it, but the hard work was always done by someone else.
The problem for me is no. It's a whole different world, and the first issue for a techie who wants to be a project manager is they have to accept that their power base, which is their technical knowledge and experience, just isn't worth that in the project management world, because it's a whole different set of skills and it's a whole different approach to life. I remember in the US with one of the guys. He was a really good analyst, been in the business for a long time, and came over to CC&B and Oracle. And he wanted to. He didn't want to be a project manager. No way is he going to be a project manager ever. And he wasn't going to take responsibility for everything. And I said to him, I need a lead architect, and it's going to be you. No, I'm not going to be a lead architect. I said to him, listen, mate, here's the deal. Either you're going to do what someone else tells you to do, or you're going to do the telling. Now, which is it going to be? Because you can't run with the fox and hunt with the hounds. And he kind of went, oh. And that was the start of something that really shocked me in the US. Anyway, he accepted the role and he did a fabulous job. And it was just great, but it gave him the first taste of being responsible and starting to move down the path. But he was able to retain his technical thing. And when I said to him later on in the project, you need to think about being a PM, because you have all the knowledge that's needed to put this thing together. No, I'm not never going to be a PM. That's not what I want to do. Oh, right, okay. We'll see.
But do you think part of that's down to, we certainly discussed this many times in the past, whether it be down the pub or in conversations I've had with people. I think pre-Oracle, the power had always been with being the lead architect or the architect. That was where all the skills were as a smaller company.
Yeah.
When there was then the transition to being Oracle, it was actually the project managers who then had all the power, because of course Oracle runs on very different rules and regulations. And actually, having a great project is not necessarily successful within the Oracle world, because it's got to be profitable. It has to do all of those things. I think SPL, we were very different in terms of the sort of genesis of what we were trying to do. We were trying to achieve a successful project. Oracle made us realize that a successful project is only one part of it. If it's not financially successful, then it's something else. So I think there was a transition of sort of power and attitude. But in your experience, would you take a good lead architect and move them to becoming a good project manager, or would you take someone who's a project manager without experience and get them to become that good person? What would be your ideal way of doing things?
The ideal is that, as I said, the problem with the lead architect or a code cutter or whatever who wants to be a PM, they have to understand that they're going to lose their power base, which is their technical knowledge. And if they accept that, then you can move them on, and you can start to do. I used to do things like, let's just see how serious and committed you are. I'd hit them in the chest with simply brilliant, and you can negotiate anything, and say, here, go away and read these 2 books. Bring them back to me when you're finished. So 2 weeks later, you'd say, how's those books going? Oh, yeah. I'm working on it. 6 weeks later, did you finish those 2 books yet? No, I haven't. Give them back to me, because you're not serious about it, right? I would, if I had the choice between a really good lead architect and a beginner project manager, I'd take the beginner project manager and skill him up, because he's already made the decision and made the transition. And if he's someone who's the only issue with that is if he's someone who's just come out of university and he knows everything there is to know about running projects, you kind of go, now listen, mate, everything that you learned at university, forget it, because it ain't.
This is reality.
Yeah, reality is a whole different world, and that's part of what you have to deal with. I mean, there are a million projects going on, and I have to say, I got parachuted into a lot of them by Brad, and before Brad by other people when I was working for Huon and also for Royal before that. And the thing is, the first thing you need to do as a project manager is say, okay, where's your plan? What are we doing? And they'd say, oh, yeah, here's the plan. And they'd give you like an A4 sheet in portrait mode with about 20 lines on it. And they'd say, there it is. And you'd say, okay. When was this last updated? Oh, well, when we started the project. And they're serious. You kind of go, right, okay. Now let's sit down and talk about this. Apart from the fact that what you're giving me is BS, right? A project plan, and this was always my mantra. A project plan starts about 3 or 4 weeks before the project starts, and you spend a lot of time working out what's got to be done from point A to point B based on contract analysis, blah, 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 talking to the salesman and finding out all the things that they promised, and then seeing what the reality is and getting together with the lead architect, which is sometimes like pulling teeth, and saying, okay, so what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to implement CC&B. Yeah, but what does that mean? Well, I guess we're going to sit down with the customer and find out what they want. Okay, so how long is that going to take? And what steps are we going to take to do that? Like, what are we going to look at? Meter reads? Are we going to look at accounts? Are we going to look at customers? Oh, well, all of that. Yeah, okay. What about within? And so you you work out all those steps, and you want to get into your plan something that's maybe maximum 5 days. If it's more than 5 days in a step, there's something wrong, because there's more steps in there. And once you've done all that, that's wonderful. And then people put it away. No, that's not what it's about. You've got to be able to look at what you plan to do, which tells you what the path is, and more importantly, when are you going to be finished? And when do you know you're finished? Now, if you plan the whole thing, as I said, away from the heat of battle, then you know what had to be done. Now, there will be changes along the way, minor stuff, nothing major. I won't accept anything major. Anybody comes to me and says, oh, well, we need to change what we're doing. No, you need to understand something. I like your idea. It's great. But we need to put the fundamentals in place before we start fiddling around. So I'll tell you what to do. Here's a form. Go away and fill this form in, because that's a really good idea and I don't want to lose it. So, and you don't want to lose it. So go away and fill in the form and make them, stand on them until they fill it in. And then you take it and you file it away and you forget about it until the end of the project. At the end of the project, you go to the customer and you drag out all these forms and say, now listen, here's all the stuff that your guys told us they wanted to do. What do you want to do now? And that becomes your follow-on project. I mean, that's the business management side of what happens on project management. As part of the project. You get all the salesmen come in and they do all that shit, blah, blah, blah. Promise everything, deliver nothing. We are in the deliver everything, promise nothing. It's the total reverse. But that's the thing. It's a challenge in itself. Managing the people, the techies, can be a real pain in the butt. Managing the customer, who can be even more of a pain in the butt. And managing what's happening and trying to make sure that you're making progress down that path that you mapped out 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 months ago. You've got to know where you are on that path. A lot of people would come along and say to me, from the customer, so, where are you guys up to? Or you'd get our own people come along, so where are you? Oh, I'm 2 days behind schedule. Like, what? How can you possibly know that? I say, well, it's easy. Here's the plan. Here's everything that's done. Here's what's not done. This is what we're working on, right? We should be, according to the plan, on this date, we should be there. We're actually 2 days behind. So I'm 2 days behind schedule. Well, what about the budget? Budget's fine, mate. Well, what's happening with the margin? At this stage, margin is about 33%. And they'd go like, what? Nobody would believe it. Because for me, that plan is an active document. It's not something that you put away. You would have seen it at NIE. My huge sheets taking up walls of space.
Walls and walls, yeah.
But it was everything that needed to be done, and it was marked off every week with, at the end of the week, on Friday night, I'd be working back when everybody else was gone home, and I'd be updating it from the information that they'd given me that day. And that's in order to start Monday morning. So I knew exactly where we were at. And the other thing that activity tells you is where you're behind. And you might be behind because the guy that's doing the job isn't getting it done quick enough. And yet over here, you've got somebody who's sitting around twiddling his thumbs, waiting for this guy to finish because he's got the next step. And he's coming to me and saying, like, what do you want me to do next? And I'm saying, well, hang on just a second. So I go and talk to blogs and say, listen, blog, looks to me like you're about 3 or 4 days behind schedule. And it turned out to be a bigger task than what we thought. Okay, I'm going to give you this guy to help for the next 3 days. Make him work and move forward. Get it out of the way. So you can, the PM, you can shift resources from where they're not vital into areas that there are vital. And of course, the critical path, you always have to be on top of the critical path. But you can't ignore all the stuff that's around it, because often the stuff that's around it feeds into the critical path or is fed by the critical path. So you've got to worry about both. And this is the stuff that they don't teach them. They don't teach them like all of this. How do you say no? The customer's always right. Yes, of course he is, except when he's never right. And that's most of the time. So how do you say no? And that's it. You say, well, I like the idea. It's fabulous. Write this form up. If he doesn't write the form up, guess what? It's not going to happen. If he does write it up.
But I was going to say, do you think that's why being a systems integrator and taking that extra position in, where all you're responsible is delivering this product, you've paid for X, I'm going to deliver X, and so if you don't get the scope creep, do you think is that something that's done successfully by other systems integrators? I'm taking Oracle as being a systems integrator. You could argue that they're not, but the reality is I saw this before very early on in my career with utilities, strangely enough, company across in East Anglia, and they had started a project, and I likened to the project was they were designing a wheel. So they started off designing a wheel, very clear spec, and then as the project developed, they got to going, well, if we get 4 wheels, we could then put them all together, and then we could build a chassis, and then we could build a body, and then we could get seats in it, etc., etc. And they ended up designing a car at the end of the day, which was great, but actually the fundamental was we wanted a wheel. And they had a car which you had to switch on and off every 5 minutes because it wouldn't work, and you had to wind a window down on the left side and open the right rear door and put someone in the driver's seat and then try it again, and it would work. And it became very shall we say, the project became bloated and actually didn't deliver what was needed. So they then found that actually giving it out to a company and making it a company's responsibility, where you're only being paid to deliver X, suddenly became the absolute solution, because then they got a wheel designed for them, and it did exactly what they needed.
Yeah, you can never lose sight of what the target is, and I mean that's really what the plan is, because the other thing is what you'd find is this guy's 3 days behind schedule. Like, what's going on? So you go and talk to him, and you sit down and you say, you're behind schedule. What's happening? Tell me what's happening. And he'd say, oh, well, they came to us and they asked us for this, this, and this. So we had to do that before we continued. And you kind of go, all right, now, listen, what you're talking about is called scope creep, mate. That's the official title. And guess what? We don't do it.
Yep.
So what you've got to do is stop doing this. You send them to me as the PM. I'll tell them, no, in the nicest possible way. You're going to get on and do what they have to do, right? Because in your terms, we got to deliver a wheel, not 4 wheels, not a car, not all of that. We got to deliver a wheel. Once we've got a wheel, then we can see, well, how do we manufacture another 3 or maybe 4? Because we'll need one in the boot. Okay, and so it goes on and on and on. So, but that, as I said, Chris, that's the stuff that I put aside, and that becomes the follow-on project. Yeah. Particularly if you've got a good relationship with the customer and the rest of your team. That's part of the deal.
How important do you think the sort of project kickoff is? I was talking to someone else about this, and we were talking about the analogy with motor racing, and talking about all the moving parts. Now, when I go motor racing, I'm part of a team. Our end goal is to do as well as we possibly can, to make sure that we're there at the end in the best possible position. So we actually work backwards. And I know over the years we spoke about getting the team together, involving people, making sure people have a clear clarity on what it is that's actually been delivered. How did you manage to get that across to people? Because I see that as always being the difficulty. Someone comes into the project and they're like, well, I've just been asked to do this. They don't know what they're designing. They don't know what color it's going to be. They don't know where the whole thing is. So how do you deal with that? And how important is the sort of whole end picture?
For someone who comes in mid-term, it's relatively easy because you're so far down the track. For some from the absolute start of the project, sometimes it's a little more difficult because you've usually got a team of people that you've never met before. You don't know what their history is, but you tend to you have to spend time with them to find out. You have to find the ones that, they're the world's greatest. You have to find the one where the guy, like, it would be nice if I was in Florida at this point. You have to be able to identify the people in your project. And based on that, the fact that you've already done the plan and you have a good idea of what's going to be done, you can start looking at the people and saying, well, he's going to go and do this bit, and she's going to do that bit, and I'm going to get him over here. Oh, and I need one of them. Get me one of them because I haven't got one. And then you can sit down with the people, the individuals. You start off with a group session where they talk about what has to be done, blah, blah, blah. You tend to talk about, well, from my point of view, I talk about, how I see the world and what I've done with the product and other teams and where I've been, etc. And then I always used to finish off with a situation that said, you guys need to understand from my perspective, here's the deal. My job is to make enough space with the customer and everything else so you can do your job. I'm not going to do your job for you. You don't do mine for me. And the reason for that is you can't run with the fox and hunt with the hounds. That's just not on. It's not possible because that's how we get big screw-ups. Now, if you don't like something that I'm doing, then you come and sit down and talk to me so that I have the opportunity to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and you may better understand where you fit in that picture. And if you don't like it, because at the end of the day, they've got to be a team of people who really come together. And in the US at OUC, we really had that. We had a great team going, and we've had great teams other places. Estonia was fabulous. NIE, the first CC&B I ever did, where I was PM for the migration or migrations. We actually had 3 of them to do, and all into the same data set. That was really interesting. And we had a great team of people. I ended up doing the follow-on project with Stewie Gay, and the first time I met him, it was fun. We just had a little discussion, and then he had a discussion with Phil, and he said, "Now I've met him. He's okay, but I'm never going to work for him." and he ended up.
How many times did you remind him of that? Yeah, absolutely.
Ended up being my lead architect on the follow-on project. So it was good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Brownie just a couple of days ago, Paul Brown.
Yeah, he was on this.
Yeah, and he was saying that actually, it's interesting. I think we often look back with rose-coloured spectacles or rose-tinted spectacles, but he was saying that the best projects he'd been on had been the projects with a good group of people. And actually, it's the people that makes the project great.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
you can have great projects in great locations, but actually they can be crappy projects because of the people you're dealing with or the client or whatever the mix is. So it does show that actually having that right blend is so key to the whole solution, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the situation you can have, which we had in Poland, where Brad
Yeah, I
said
remember that one.
Brad said to me, listen, can you get out to Katowice on Tuesday? And I went, like, what? Yeah, Tuesday next week. And like, this is Thursday or something. Like, why? He said, well, I'll tell you what happened. He said, I went into a meeting with the customer and the customer's lead, and she opened the meeting by saying, okay, Brad, give me one reason why I shouldn't cancel this project. And Brad said,
Wow.
well, I'm going to bring Brian Smith in to take over and make it happen. Now, I don't know what happened from there, but the next thing he's on the phone, get there. So I got there and, usual, it was a disaster. It was a disaster. They couldn't make up their mind what they wanted to do or how they wanted to do it or when they wanted to do it. So we started making decisions for them. And there were all sorts of challenges, but we got it done. We got it done. We had the migration ready. We had everything fabulously in place. They put it, we went live, which was great, with no migration. They would not commit to doing the migration. And yet they ran with new customers, put them on the system, and it worked fine. But they wouldn't move everything across. And at the end of the day, about 12 months later, they only had about 300 or 400 customers on the system. And they had, on their old system, unmigrated, they had thousands. But in the end, the project, the application got cancelled by the German head office because there weren't enough customers on. It wasn't seen to be successful, and it was fabulously successful. And they ended up firing 4 of the 6 people who were our prime drivers on from the customer side because they just wouldn't commit to taking it forward.
Interesting though, because the thing I take from that one is one of the strengths of something like CC&B is how flexible and how adaptable and how wide it is. But it creates a different problem though, is that in some ways, do you think the customers can often be overwhelmed by what the choices are, the myriad of choices, and actually sometimes what they want to be done is told, we're going to do this. As you said, you came in, you made decisions, you made stuff happen. Do you think it's almost like analysis paralysis, that they've got so many choices to make, they struggle to do it?
Yeah, I think they do. One of the early things I used to address with the customer was the fact that there was at that stage, I don't know where it is now, but at that stage there was over 3,500 parameters that had to be set. These are the choices that you need to make, and sometimes they can't make those choices. They have to. The customer has to be encouraged to give us the experts and give their experts, that is, and give their experts the ability and the right and the support to make decisions. That's fundamental. If everything if everything has to go back up the tree, guess what? Nothing gets decided. I used to when I was in Germany, pre-Oracle, pre-SPL, I used to have this vision of the CEO's desk, and it's covered in paper like that, heaps of paper. And when you grab one of these pieces of paper and look at it, it's a request for pencils, because nobody can make a decision about what pencils to buy. And that's what happened. You'd say, oh, you need to make a decision. Oh, Brian, I don't think I think that'll have to go up to my boss. You say, all right, take it up to his boss. Oh, yeah, well, I think I know what the decision should be, but no, I'll have to take that up the path to my boss, and this is what I had, this vision of the CEO's desk, and I've still got it, it's like that. And it's, what pencils should we buy? You can't do that. That becomes project paralysis because you can't move forward if they won't make a decision. And the one thing I learned in Germany is why they got into the Second World War.
Oh, God, go on then.
And the reason is you've never seen a video or a film of Hitler where he wasn't screaming and shouting and thumping the table. And I kind of went, oh, so we're going to make this decision. So this is what we're going to do then. And they'd all go, oh, okay. And that's what you had to do. You had to thump the table and say, well, I don't care. This is what we're doing. We're going to go forward. If you guys don't like it and you want it changed, then you'll have to make a decision to come back to me and get me to change it. But right now, this is what we're doing. Oh, okay. That was the German approach.
But in some ways, though, Brian, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you take someone like Trump as a good example, what does he do? He makes decisions and says, "Look, you're either on board with me coming in this direction, or you're not." And yeah, that's been a strong leader. Again, through someone I met through motor racing. He's the CEO of a company, and it's a FTSE company, and he was in the board suggesting that they're going to do something, and all of his advisors said, "No, we think you're wrong." And as he said, well, look, if we go down the road to the library or Waterstones, he said, how many books do you think there are on business and business management and business ideas? And it's like, what, 200-300? He said, yeah. So guess what? There's 300 different ways of doing it. You all think I'm wrong. This is the direction we're going. And that's off he went and did, But that's the job of the CEO, isn't it? That's the job of the leader, to lead a project. But as you said...
Yeah, up to a point. Remember, you've got to take the team with you. You've just got to. And more importantly, you've got to take the customer. You've got to take them along with you.
And that's the interesting thing. It's taking the customer, isn't it? Because I think that's something. And do you think that there's a problem in implementing software? And I'm not going to say it's a sales problem. I'm not going to say it's... I think it'd be very easy to point fingers. But do you think that maybe the customer isn't involved enough in actually, okay, we're going to put this piece of software in, but you need to do these 10 steps as well. Otherwise, the project won't be successful?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The other one is that the salesman goes on and goes, blah, 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 it'll do this, we'll do that, everything's wonderful, and that'll be $15 million, please. And the customer goes, now at that point, that there's an issue. So they're looking for a cheaper price. So how do we reduce that price, Chris? Well, if you do some of the work, then we can back away from it and reduce the price. So you go, oh, fine, okay, yes, we'll do some work. What should we do, Brad? Okay, you could do the training of your own people, so we don't have to do it. Yes, that's your wider operator. Yes, okay, we'll do that. You could do the management of the parameters table, so that we know what's been decided and how we move that on and manage that. And if you change it, what the options are when we come to the migration and we find there are 800 records that we want to migrate, but you haven't told us what to do with here. You said that this had 1, 2, and 3, and we've just found 4, 5, and 6 as well. You need to work. So you could manage all of that. Oh, yeah, we can do that. And so it goes on. And okay, so the new price is, and they go, okay. And then they don't bloody do it. But for me, because I include them. I include that stuff into the plan, and they become the resource that's supposed to do it. And every week I'm going, you were supposed to, is that done? And then they get snaky, just like my own people do. You're always asking these silly bloody questions. Yes. Guess why?
Yeah.
Because I know we're 2 days behind. Guess why I know we're 2 days behind? And not, well, I think we're probably pretty much, we might be a week or so behind schedule, maybe, not quite sure. You know, that's the stuff that you get out of amateur PMs. A professional PM knows exactly what he's doing, who his team are, who's doing what to who, and who's paying. And that's where you need to be. You really need to be there. I'll tell you another one, and I showed you this.
Yeah, push it up a bit. A word to the wise.
Right. So this is born out of the US. When I first went to the US, you'd remember, Chris, that I had all these sayings from all over the place, various things from me mum and me dad, and just stuff that goes on in Oz.
Busier than a one-armed paper hanger.
Yeah, that's the one. So
bigger than my mum's undies.
Yep.
Yeah, carry
This
on.
will be bigger than my mum's undies. I told you heard about that one, didn't you?
Go on.
That was my brother's one, right?
Okay.
He set up. I think it was an 80th birthday for her, a birthday party, and he invited everybody, and he said, "This is going to be bigger than my mum's undies." Blah blah blah. And so everybody went, and then mum turned up, and it was time for mum to have her little speech after the eats and things, and so she reaches down into her handbag and pulls out a set of really skivvy undies, and she said, "I just wanted everybody to know before we start, these are my undies." And so that one
Brilliant.
just became part of the deal. But what happened was there was some little problem, and one of the guys said, "Oh well, we found a little problem, but there's no need to tell the customer about it because we fixed it. All right, everything's done." I said, "Oh well, that's great. Stitch in time saves 9." What? A stitch in time saves 9? Like, what's that? It's a proverb, mate. Do you not know these proverbs? Anyway, we went on and on and on with that. And then a little later, something else happened. One of the girls was getting married, and I said to her, like, "Why buy a book if you can join a library?" And the guys went, "What?" Like all of these sorts of things. Anyway, one of the guys said, "Oh, I got to write that down. I just got to write that down." Now, we were in a room with no windows, but we had whiteboards all around the walls. And he started writing it on the whiteboard, put up 1, 2, and he went on. And in the finish, we ended up with 45.
Good Lord, I can't see that on the camera. It might
You
come up,
won't
but oh
need
yeah,
to.
yeah.
You won't need to. But what happened was, I said, okay. When I did retire on my birthday, they had I can't show you the photo, but they had my desk surrounded by balloons, and on every balloon they'd written on one of these sayings.
Fantastic.
So
fantastic.
The thing I couldn't believe was that they didn't know proverbs. It's just not a common thing over there. Like it's now or never. Like what? So I came up with some of them, and I said, "Oh, I'll do some calligraphy on these things, and then I'll publish it and send you all a copy." I haven't got that far yet. But I thought this was good. A word to the wise. Guidelines for project managers. For inspiration, remember, life's not a fairy tale. I wish never changed anything. Tell yourself there has to be a better way. Ask yourself, what if we, and I think that's the sort of stuff that guided me through this whole process, particularly there has to be a better way. You know, we're doing it like this. Surely to God, there's a better way of doing this. Oh, I'm just watching somebody back out, nearly hitting the van across the road. Okay. So then another one that came up. I don't know whether you can see this one.
After, oh, yeah, I can't, something.
It says, never lift your kilt until you have your skivvies on. So,
What a great, yeah, I've heard that before.
I mean, I used to tell the guys, look, there are standard approaches in project management. One is deliver bad news early. Bad news is best delivered early. If it's bad news, tell them. Don't hide it, tell them. Mm-hmm. So we had a big problem. And the guys came to me and said, we've got this big problem. I said, oh, yeah, what's that? They told me what it was. I thought, shit, that's a big problem. That is a big problem. So they said, well, are you going to tell the customers? And I said, yeah, I'll tell them, but not yet. And they went, but hang on a sec.
Tell the customer, tell them early.
Tell them early. And I said, yeah. Now, what's the solution to this? You guys got a solution to this? And they said, no, we haven't yet. We've just discovered the problem. I said, okay, go away. This was in the morning. Come back after lunch and tell me what the solution is. And I don't care how many people you have to drag in, do it. I need a solution. And they said, but aren't you going to tell them? And I said, listen, guys, you never lift your kilt until you know you got the skivvies on. You know, and that's what it's about. You know, that's it.
Do you know what, Smithy? I think in some ways that's a good place to wind it up. You know, I think that's worth the while. Could you share those 45 quotes with me?
For a small fee.
For a small fee, excellent. I'll buy you some golf balls the next time I see you.
No. You keep stealing mine. You're robbing right off the tee. Okay. I've seen you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's only because I'm in the bush, and yeah, there you go. So,
Chris, all right, I'd be delighted. It's been fun to catch up. Don't leave it too long before we do it again.
Sounds good to me. Well, look, thanks very much, Mr. Smith.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll look forward to catching up with you at some point soon.